From a fight rich with drama and history to a brutal knockout stacking up with some of the best of all time, this is Joe Rogan reacting to UFC 287, one of the greatest KOs ever seen. First up, let's dive into the intense history between the fighters of the main event. Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira squared off for the fourth time in their heated rivalry, spanning all the way back to 2016. Prior to Adesanya's fame in the UFC, he and Pereira were members of the Glory Kickboxing League. In their first bout, the Brazilian fighter got the best of Izzy, winning by unanimous decision. A rematch was set for the following year, where Pereira knocked out Adesanya. He delivered a brutal shot to Izzy's chin, becoming the one and only fighter to ever knock out the last stylebender. In 2018, Izzy joined the UFC, quickly becoming the middleweight champion. The Brazilian kickboxing legend received words of Izzy's success in the UFC and decided to give mixed martial arts a shot. After pummeling his first few opponents, Pereira brutally knocked out contender Sean Strickland, earning a spot in the championship fight. His opponent? None other than his kickboxing foe, Israel Adesanya. The fight was set for November of 2022, with Izzy eager to exact his revenge. Despite it being Pereira's fourth fight in the UFC, he dominated Adesanya, claiming the prestigious championship belt in the process. Izzy demanded yet another rematch, hoping to finally defeat his arch-nemesis. President of the UFC, Dana White, salivated at the opportunity and set a date for Adesanya and Pereira 4. UFC 287 became the most anticipated bout in years, with millions hungry for more rounds between the heated rivals. Now, let's take a look at the fight recap from an extraordinary main event at UFC 287. Adesanya went into the fight as the favorite, despite losing the previous 3 rounds to his adversary. The opening round started off slow, with both fighters playing it safe. Pereira's took a more conservative opening approach, attempting to wear down the legs of Adesanya. Izzy is known as a conservative fighter, using his intimidating presence to strike fear in his opponent. The Brazilian landed his strikes at a ridiculous rate, converting on over 60% of his attempts in the first round of the contest. On the other hand, the anime-loving Adesanya struggled to find much success. He seemed to be on the back ropes for the majority of the fight. Pereira's nasty leg kicks began to take their toll, with his opponent looking sluggish and worn down. Izzy shifted to a defensive approach just 6 minutes into the bout. He started to shell up and look severely compromised. In the final moments of the second round, Pereira went in for the kill. He charged at Izzy, landing a nasty combo, seemingly dazing Adesanya. The Brazilian landed a crushing elbow to his opponent's face and wound up for the knockout blow, until Adesanya took the initiative, capitalizing on Pereira's overcommitment to a knockout. He landed a series of brutal counter strikes, stunning the wobbly Pereira. Izzy threw out a series of straight right hands to the face, finishing off Pereira with a nasty left hook and knocking him out cold. Adesanya celebrated directly in front of his rival, firing imaginary bows and arrows at the dazed Brazilian. The unbelievable comeback victory went down as one of the best KOs in UFC history. Moving on, Izzy's improbable knockout left commentators completely stunned. Beloved, passionate UFC commentator Joe Rogan could not believe his eyes. He deemed Izzy's knockout as one of the greatest KOs I've seen in my life. UFC fans are always eager to see Rogan's reaction as he gushes passion and erupts for crazy knockouts. Rogan is known for his intense enthusiasm as an announcer, but his reaction to Izzy's knockout was unlike any other. In the heat of the moment, Joe was so shocked that he pushed co-commentator Jon Anik, nearly knocking Anik out of his seat. After a few moments, with his jaw dropped to the freaking floor, Joe finally collected himself and shared his thoughts. Thanks to the drama involved in the fighters' rivalry and the unexpected nature of the knockout, Rogan claimed it to be among the best knockouts of all time. Reclaiming his belt from Pereira, coupled with a brutal counter-striking combination, made for a truly spectacular knockout. Many fans attacked Rogan, claiming he was biased toward Adesanya. One fan even tweeted, "Damn Joe, suck his already." Others backed up his comments on the knockout, finding few instances of a more impressive KO. In addition to Rogan's praise, several UFC fighters shared their thoughts on Izzy's knockout. The last stylebender is quite outspoken, unafraid to troll fellow UFC athletes and earning an iffy reputation among fighters. Despite his controversial behavior, the tweets flooded in, praising Israel's phenomenal effort. Legendary heavyweight fighter Francis Ngannou tweeted, "The best middleweight of all time, and I'm not arguing with anyone." The Cameroonian former champion chimed in, supporting Israel and commending the stellar knockout blow. Quite the cosign for the reigning middleweight champion. Dynamic Australian fighter Alex Volkanovski shared his support for Izzy, tweeting, "That's how you do it, baby, LFG," following the comeback victory by Adesanya. Volk is not normally an active Twitter user, so his admiration speaks volumes. American fighter Michael Chandler jumped on the Israel praise train. Known for eating his fair share of punches and irking opponents mid-fight, Chandler has quickly become a fan favorite. He shared his astonishment with friends, tweeting, "Izzy is back in a big way." Out of all the fighters who commented on Izzy's performance, Khamzat Chimaev stood alone, issuing a warning to the undisputed champion. Chimaev said, "Congratulations, Stylebender. See you soon," displaying his eagerness to contend for the belt. Chimaev is a brutal fighter, with most of his opponents failing to last more than a round in the octagon. If he continues to sustain his great form, we may see him square off against Adesanya in the near future. Finally, let's take a look at how Israel's knockout blow over Pereira stacks up with some of the best KOs in UFC history. When discussing the best knockouts of all time, it's impossible to neglect Jorge Masvidal's flying knee KO. Arguably the best knockout in recent memory, Masvidal eviscerated his opponent just 5 seconds into the fight. UFC 239 featured a matchup between Ben Askren and Jorge Masvidal. Askren's background in wrestling seemed to give him a slight advantage over the knockout specialist Masvidal. With Jorge gaining a load of hype, many expected him to overpower Askren, leading to a quick victory. But no one expected what would come next, as Masvidal charged at Askren, connecting a ridiculous flying knee to the head and draining the life out of Askren's body. The 5-second flying knee knockout became one of the most replayed clips in UFC history. It's definitely tough to argue that Izzy's counter-striking KO was the greater knockout, but it's imperative to factor in the history between Israel and Pereira. Let's not forget, Pereira is a much better fighter than Askren. Undoubtedly a tough call, but the Adesanya KO takes the crown in my book. It would be impossible to discuss the greatest knockouts in UFC history without mentioning the name Chuck Liddell. Back in 2008, the Iceman typically came out on top when stepping into the octagon, but his fight with Rashad Evans was a different story. While Liddell was in the late stages of his career, he still remained as one of the best fighters in the UFC. During the main event of UFC 88, Evans knocked out the legendary Liddell in a ferocious manner. With a flat-footed right hand, Evans dropped Liddell just 1 minute into the second round. The standing right-hand punch went down as one of the greatest knockouts and greatest moments in the young history of professional mixed martial arts. While Evans' knockout may not be as flashy as Masvidal's flying knee, it certainly marked a historic moment in the UFC. Despite taking down the Iceman, Adesanya's comeback KO over Pereira still tops Rashad Evans' memorable punch. There's no question that Izzy's victory over his arch-nemesis at UFC 287 will remain one of the best knockouts of all time. So, from a brutal knockout stacking up with some of the cream of the crop, to a fight rich with drama and history, that was Joe Rogan reacting to UFC 287, one of the greatest KOs ever seen.